Um, oh, there we go. Whew, okay. Thank you. All right, so today we're going to spend a few minutes, as John said, as a follow up to our session last year on emerging issues in occupational safety, health, and wellness. And I'm sure you've had many, many, many conversations since then. Um, and we are so fortunate to have this collective within our centers and also across our centers in our region. I'm really, really excited about that and engaging our broader networks. So, as you've heard over the last few days, um, continuous learning and action is really, really needed if we're going to address these rapidly changing complex issues. That's been the take-home message so far for me from these the past couple of days of presentations. And so I'm going to introduce Blake Scott, doctoral candidate here at USF, who's going to share a little bit of feedback, preliminary feedback from our session last year, and then we'll have the opportunity to talk in small groups from there.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. So yeah, just a little bit of background for any of those of you that weren't with us in North Carolina last year when we did this. We did a session of focus groups there with participants just like yourselves, obviously. They were master's and PhD students, faculty, center directors, associate directors, program directors, nurses, coordinators. So really great just mix of different perspectives. And also from various fields, again, much just like yourself. You know, you have psychology, public health, chemical exposure, air quality, occupational health psychology. So we had a really great group just to kind of pull from while we already had you all sitting there anyways. So it was great. And then after we put that all together, Dr. Marshall and definitely a few others, they put together a team of those that were participants and that were there and said who would like to help be part of this for this analysis project. And so as you can see, it really was a great opportunity to combine so many universities' resources: UF, USF, UCF, University of Kentucky, UNC, and UAB. It's been really great working with these folks, having some just amazing conversations about what should we do with this information, because it really was just such good, rich data that we collected from everybody, and what should we do about it? What should we gain from it? So one of the things on top of doing a focus group is that we also had each of the focus groups, they were divided up into 7 of them. We asked them to go ahead and just write down their top 5 top issues that they thought of for what were emerging issues, and then they also reported them out. So this grid you see right here was taken from the posters that they presented at the end. There's also a very lovely word cloud there. And as you can start to see, a big topic that we've been talking about more during this conference is especially burnout and return to work, climate change, so a lot of the same issues, but also some different ones, some really interesting ones: emerging technology, traffic safety, diversity, work from home. You know, this was 2022, and so we were still just kind of coming out of the pandemic, and that was very much in the forefront of everybody's mind. And here is the approach that we took to analyzing this data. We looked at the NIOSH extramural and training programs, and what were they based off of? What were their aims? What were their scopes? What were their goals? And we took those and thought, what if we could then look at this qualitative data we collected and go, what is it that folks spoke to that ties in with these centers and programs? So it was a combination of total worker health and then future of work within that, as well as education and research from ERCs. And then you have some really specific particular occupations: agriculture, construction, emergency response, mining, cultural commercial fishing, and state surveillance too. So we looked at all of those and went, how do the topics discussed in those focus groups fit in with the aims of NIOSH extramural and training programs? And here's the beginning of what we started to find. We've gone through and we've done the qualitative analysis. Myself and Kathy, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, as well as Dr. Carolyn Oldham from University of Kentucky, we did the coding, worked through it. It was really a great working with them. And just to kind of go through the code book that we put together for the thematic analysis is when it comes to workplace, that AI and robotics was very much at the top of everyone's mind, talking about replacing workers as well as organizational support for gig workers, support of mental well-being for COVID-19. When it came to work, and this is how it's defined by the particular organizations, like for this one it's Total Worker Health. It was very much a lot about technology, so how technology is evolving, potential injuries about working with certain robotics, biomonitors that have been mentioned here, and as well as confidentiality and accuracy of those wearable devices. When it comes to workforce, the increasing older age of the workforce, as we see the baby boomer generation is very much still working, has a wealth of knowledge, and they're working even longer. So how is it that we can support them, and what considerations do we need to give? As well as skills like gaps in new technologies, low wages for burnout, offering different types of PPE measurements instead of just standard ones, so looking at more of that diversity aspect. For prevention and control of hazard exposures, PPE shortage was very much still on everyone's mind last year. We had that. Health outcomes of either new or not as well researched topics, such as certain chemicals and particles, as well as climate change and vector-borne diseases, which we've heard a lot of this past couple of days. Extreme weather temperatures, heat and cold exposure, and PTSD from certain jobs. Community supports is really just all about that outside the work atmosphere and how can that support a person. And so social support for individuals outside of the workplace, particularly those that have an occupation that really either have certain stigma associated with it or perhaps a lot of psychological stressors. For policies, a big one was return to work from COVID-19 at the time, and regulations, again, going back to those plastic toxins, chemicals, and what more do we need to do to keep workforces safe, and promoting worker well-being. For education and research specifically, there was research on new and existing chemicals, toxins, and plastics again, like what should we do about it, how should we go about that research, as well as increasing the education of their health outcomes, like those long-term outcomes, and again, using wearable technology, but to collect data. How can that be used for research and for the best way? For those NIOSH priority occupations, those really specific workforces and industries, it was mental health of agriculture workers and emergency responders, and then the stigma that sometimes they and other workforces face about seeking help for mental health and how to instead support them. State surveillance, difficulties in collecting data, and unregulated industries and undocumented workforces, and just those gaps and the sometimes lack of centralization of data. And so overall, the nature of the workforce and the impact of disasters in the transforming workforce was really a big topic. It's that combination of that burnout and that climate change and COVID-19 that was really outstanding in what we saw with data saturation. And organizations and community can support mental health by providing resources to their workforces and extinguishing stigma in certain workforces, although really every workforce should work to do that. And encouraging seeking care and researching and education about burnout, more about that. And I'll hand it back to Dr. Marshall.
So I know that's a lot of information, and we'll be sharing out a synthesis of that as we meet with our broader team to help do some sense making around all of those issues. Um, but I know some new things have come up. Some things maybe got better, some things got worse. So this is our opportunity to share and talk with one another um, about what you're sensing, what you're experiencing, what's on your mind. It was also really cool as Blake went through all of those different topics to see how much of that was reflected in our posters and in our PPRT presentations, and how cool that we have a total worker health center in our region now. So what we'd like to do at this point is spend some time in a few small group discussions. We know that our leadership landscape, especially, has had a lot of turmoil at all levels of leadership, and that's really taking its toll on particular workforces as well. So we really want to talk about that today. What I'm going to invite you to do now is to join a table that has a flip chart and markers, and actually I'll just move some to some full tables so you can all stay, the big tables can stay put. And what we'll do is I'll guide you through really 4 questions. So we'll just take a few minutes for each. If each table could have a note taker, so we're going to do the low tech way. We've got sticky notes and markers and flip charts to take notes, but again, to just hear from you your thoughts and ideas. I encourage you to also mix up a little bit with, last year we kind of had our centers sit together, but feel free to join one another and mix it up a little bit, so that diversity of viewpoints will really help. So to begin with, we'll just have people self-organize into tables with a flip chart, and starting with our brief introductions, just share one word that you have in your mind that would describe the state of occupational safety, health, and wellness in our region today. Think about how it feels, how it seems to you. We're presencing here. And then we'll have a chance after that, that initial introduction to elaborate a little bit more for a few minutes. So go ahead and choose your tables, and we will check back in just a few minutes here.